morning, everyone. Happy day one of a 2-week half term here in Kent, if only it was just 2 days. And welcome to the news agenda with me, Fleet Street Fox. And today I'm joined for the second time in a week by the Mirror's showbiz editor features, Jessica Bolton. Morning, Jess.
Morning, Susie. Thank you for having me back again.
Now, this is the People's Pay-Per-View, so get into the comments, ask us your questions. We'll do our best to deal with them for you. Those of you listening later on podcast will just have to heckle a passing dignitary and see if that changes anything. So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on tonight's Pride of Britain Awards, a feature of the showbiz and media calendar hosted by the Mirror, in which the very best and most inspiring ordinary people in the country are fated for once by the great and good. And although he's on a state visit to Australia, King Charles has been getting involved. Jess, what's he saying?
Yes, King Charles has written to all of the winners from tonight's thing, and he's been saying some great stuff, telling them about how they are such an inspiration. Now, it's his particular in his letter he wrote. Of course, it's the King's Trust now, not the Prince's Trust, but he wrote to the winner, Molly Leonard. He wrote, "On this 25th anniversary of the Pride of Britain Awards, I send my warmest admiration to all of this year's winners. You each represent the very best in our society," which I think sums up what Pride of Britain is all about, really. You know, and there's a similar statement from Keir Starmer, who said some beautiful words as well, talking about how these are superheroes that don't wear capes. He said they may not be the cape-wearing superheroes we normally think of. In fact, they look just like the rest of us, but they do have something special that makes them very special indeed: bravery, determination, generosity, empathy, and huge spirit.
Yeah. And that sense of public service, of course, which kids spent so long talking about. Now, what do you think, everybody? How do you feel about Pride of Britain? Have you seen it? Are you looking forward to this year's? Jess has been involved in it for a very long time previously. And, you know, obviously there's been lots of very inspiring stories over the years. Tonight is the 25th anniversary, would you believe it? 25 years of just a humble little newspaper celebrating the best of Britain, and includes people like, as you mentioned there, Jess, Molly Leonard. Now, she struggled with an eating disorder, and as a result of that was inspired to set up a series of craft workshops to improve other people's mental well-being. And it's so inspiring that she's got the King's Trust Award tonight. Jess, there are some amazing stories being trailed ahead of what's, I don't know when it's on the television. Is it tonight or Wednesday?
I think it will be later in the week. It's
later in the week. I think it's happening tonight, isn't it? And then
it happens tonight. It's normally put on a couple of days later.
And they edit all the boobies out, and then it'll be on later in the week. But so there are some amazing, inspiring stories being trailed, and it will be over the next couple of days. And it's going to lead a lot of the news agenda, I'd hope, for the rest of the week. Is there one in particular which has caught your eye, or perhaps which, you know, over your years of being involved with Pride of Britain, that you can remember?
Oh, there's been so many. I mean, for the past sort of 10 years or so, when I've been here at the Mirror, I was always sort of involved on the night, normally running all the reporters on the night. So all of the stories are like coming through me and desking them all. So it is really, that's a tough job, because you've got to sit there and make sure you don't cry at all these emotional stories whilst putting all the copy through on deadline on the night for the paper and everywhere. So it's one after another, and there is so many good
someone
ones.
Go back to Alicia Dixon and check that with her, you know.
Exactly. And it's Exactly, but there's so many good ones, and you just know that there's I mean, each story you're just like, I cannot believe how you know, how selfless some of these people are who have been through the terrible things. The one in the paper today, we've got this lovely little story of Isla Motto, and she's a little girl. She lost both legs to sepsis, and she's carried on. She's done fundraising, and she's going down there tonight with her mum. She was surprised by Alicia Dixon, so she got a little backstage look at BGT. So that was a nice surprise for her, because that's one of the good things that Pride of Britain does, is it tries to, you know, do something nice for people, give something back that they don't normally have, and just sort of make them feel special again for a day.
Yeah, the thing I like about it is that we spend so long, don't we, in this country with people who are famous, making them feel special and falling over ourselves for them in some way or another, even when you go into a coffee shop out of their way, And this is one of those events where they sort of fall over themselves to help other people out.
Yeah.
And some of them really genuinely are very moved and care very much about the people that they're being on stage to praise. And so it's always worth doing, I think. If nothing else, it just is one night a year where everyone remembers what's important.
Exactly. And I think all the celebs that there's a lot of celebs that come every year who are absolutely devoted to the cause of doing it, and they're really passionate about it. Obviously, I'm not just talking about Carol Vorderman, but she's been there since the beginning. She does a tremendous job hosting it for us. So does Ashley. Now he's joined a few years ago. It's a great thing, and it's not just like young kids. There's like the young kids that have been through awful ordeals, and they've gone on and they've raised money and they've done something really positive. But you've got old people who have done stuff for decades and they're finally getting like lifetime recognition awards. I mean, there was obviously Alan Bates was a Pride of Britain winner before the TV drama and before everyone sort of learned about that.
One of the things that Pride of Britain does is it highlights national scandals, perhaps before they've sort of become household knowledge, as it were. Or before they've achieved resolution of any sort. It helps raise those profiles. So in previous years, the show shone a light on things like Margaret Aspinall, one of the Hillsborough mums. She won a special recognition award on behalf of everyone who lost someone in that tragedy. And last year it was Alan Bates, like you say, who led the fight against the post office on behalf of the sub-postmasters who were wrongly accused of theft. And that was 3 months before the drama that made it sort of more household knowledge, as it were. So it really helped shine a light on it. This year, the people who are going to collect that award are Jason Evans, Andy Evans, and Michelle Tolley. And if you haven't heard of them, then you should do, and you will do soon. I've met Jason. He's part of the Factor 8 campaign about the infected blood scandal, which had a big public inquiry that's finally ground to a conclusion last year, in which the Conservative government didn't really accept all the needs to pay the compensation that was necessary for giving people infected blood transfusions. And even the new government, I think, has been a bit slow, although there has been lots of meetings with ministers and stuff to try and move things on. I think they're having a bit more positive time with it than the nuclear veterans are. But although it's still still yet to be fully compensated, but they're going to be receiving their award. And I'm sure they'll be updating people about where that scandal is and what the government is or is not doing. And I think it's something that, Jess, people tend to, if you mention infected blood, people know there was a scandal. But they tend to think it's been solved, a bit like Post Office, I suppose, or Hillsborough, and unaware that there are still many things which are unresolved about this. In a strange way, seeing as this is Pride of Britain, does this mean that, these scandals are something that Britain can be proud of? Or is it perhaps more about how we handle them?
I don't think it's something you can say you're proud of, but I think you could be proud of the people who have fought back against the system for all these years. I think that's sort of how you say it, is when you think about the sheer relentlessness and the work and how it overtakes your life for some of these people who are campaigning. I mean, you've obviously worked tirelessly with the nuclear test vets. You know how much some of them have put into campaigning for just getting justice. And it eats up people's lives. Their whole lives become about this one thing. And that sense of it, I always see from various stories where I've talked to people in these sort of different situations of campaigning for something like this over a long time. It's that sense of like powerlessness, of wanting to be heard, of just wanting to be recognized for your point of view or for what's happened, and for somebody to say this was wrong. That is kind of what a lot of people are fighting for. Obviously, they want compensation if that, and all of that. But the most important thing is for people to be heard. And I do feel like just recognizing these people's sort of devotion and dedication, people like Alan Bates and everybody involved in that campaign. I mean, he obviously has sort of been, cheered the most, and his name has become sort of synonymous because it was in the TV drama. But people working with him on that campaign as well. All of those people, I do think is just so lovely to be able to give them a sort of platform to say these people are doing the right thing for other people. It's a good example if others who are affected by scandals, it holds people to account. So it's more like pride in the way that people fight back, but it's heartbreaking about how long it takes for some of these things to get resolved.
They have to fight, to get people to tell the truth. And one of the things you said, although it does eat up a lot of time, it eats up a lot of my time writing about the nuclear veterans, but I get to turn the computer off and leave this desk and clear off. And when you are the person who is affected by whatever issue it is, whether it's infected blood or something else, you have to deal with everything every hour of every day. You don't get to switch it off. And to also make that then your campaign and your daily sort of chore, if you like, is something that you're fighting for and a cause, I think requires an enormous amount of dedication, far more than I've ever shown. And it's one of those things where I think you're right, is how people react to this. And I think a lot of them, having spoken to a lot of people involved with the Hillsborough Law campaign and so on, a lot of groups that have got issues like this, that one of the things that inspires them is they want to make what happened to them count for something. And they don't want it to just be that they're a victim and it's a net loss. They want it to be a positive. They want it to be a gain somehow.
They want to do something. They want to get something out of it, do something for other people.
Make it count.
Make it into something. And I mean, that is just, it's so admirable when you think about that and the amount of people who we've highlighted in Pride of Britain who you just want to say, why is no one helping these people? This is ridiculous. But at least we can do that bit of highlighting some of the causes.
They're not just victims. A lot of them are lions as well. And it's worth bearing that in mind, I think. Anyway, we need to move on. So
before we move on, can I just say, like, obviously, if it was both of our late boss, it was Peter Willis who started Pride of Britain, and tonight it's 25 years of Pride of Britain, and I just want to say, like, I had an honor of working for him, and he was so passionate about this, and I just think it is such a fantastic legacy for him. And I hope that we do him proud tonight with the 25th anniversary, because it's very special to all of us here at the Mirror. So I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to say that.
No, quite right. Peter's not with us anymore. Everyone who didn't realise. So the fact that this is continuing after he's not with us, I think, is quite important as well. Hopefully there'll be some kind of mention to him tonight in the show. Now, keep an eye. I think it's probably Wednesday or later in the week, but that'll be on the television. It'll definitely be worth spending your evening watching it. But take a box of tissues with you. Now, on to the main story of the day. Something else King Charles has been doing. Him and the Queen are on a state visit down under. Now, last night, after a rapturous reception on Royal Walkabout, which happened in time for deadline, and a series of positive engagements, the King was heckled after newspaper deadline, overnight our time, shortly after he was giving a speech at the Australian Parliament. Now, a senator who represents Indigenous Australians shouted, "You're not my king," and accused him of genocide. There she is. Jess, can you take us through this? Who is she and what did she say exactly?
Yes, she is Lydia Thorpe. Now, she was an Aboriginal Australian independent senator. Now, she used to be part of the Green Party, and she got sworn in a couple of years ago. She was very vocal on Indigenous issues and Indigenous rights. But she ended up having to leave the Green Party because of her sort of views. She didn't feel like they were strong or radical enough on protecting Indigenous rights.
I think the Greens were radical enough.
She didn't think the Greens were radical enough. Yes, the Greens weren't the Conservatives. Let's put it that way. The Greens are fairly radical, but they weren't radical enough. So she left. She went independent, and this is her passion project. Of it is about the Indigenous rights in Australia, and the fact that obviously, in her view, she feels that it was genocide when Britain came over and in the past and made it part of the Commonwealth. I mean, it's very difficult for us to talk about this because, to be honest, we all know the history. We did go over, we did start sending people over there. There were people who are Indigenous there, It's the same as in America, where we're, over there, when you've got the Native Americans, it is a difficult situation. So what happened yesterday was that she came in during the ceremony as they're there, dressed in Indigenous dress, holding a piece of paper, and she came up to the stage. Nobody expected this, and she started shouting, "You are not my king," as the protection officers tried to get her out the building. She then said, "You committed genocide against our people. Give us our land back. Give us back what you stole from us, our bones, our skulls, our babies, our people." So it was hard words. It's for Charles and Camilla, for their benefit, didn't look ruffled. They carried on sort of like...
They've probably trained for this moment, haven't they?
They've trained for this moment. They will have been, I'm sure they've probably been practicing over the last few weeks of how to have selective hearing.
Stewardesses, no, you shout at me and we'll just ignore you.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they are strong words. I mean, obviously, I think accusing Charles of genocide is from our point of view, and we're talking from a sort of privileged position over here, and being on this side of it, it would seem a little harsh. Obviously, it's something that's historically happened from a long time ago. We've have this good relationship with Australia. They're part of the Commonwealth. There has been difficulties over the years, but as we talked about last week, the particular push for independence hasn't been that particularly strong over there until recently, when they started. So there's been a bit of the sort of the hubbub last week, and now this.
There's definitely been some a dip in Republican sentiment. It was a lot higher a few years ago, but she has a bit of a point, perhaps. Now, what do you think, everybody? How do you feel about for example, our Britain's colonial past? How do you feel about how this is being dealt with on the world stage? Do we owe reparations? Do we owe an apology? Is there something, as Leslie says here, you can't change history, you should learn from it, but we're not doing that, are we? This is one of the things. You start ignoring Indigenous people and their views, then that is very much kind of how we got in this mess in the first place. So Britain's impact on Australia includes deporting convicts, some of whom are my rellies. Hi, chaps. Deporting children from care homes.
Yeah.
Nuclear weapons tests, a dozen of them, and about 600 radioactive experiments so toxic it'll be a million years before the outback doesn't need to be scientifically monitored anymore. And that's just off the top of my head, okay? But the counter argument is that if Britain hadn't colonised Australia, some other white Europeans would have turned up and done it. The French would have done it, or the Dutch, or the Portuguese, or something. And then you can have an argument about who's the more benign colonial power, couldn't you? It wasn't Charles also that did this, and it was a long ago forebear of his, and we're not responsible for the sins of our parents. Now, Critical Thinker says Charles was born in 1948, so he's hardly to blame. History was universally conquer or be conquered. What is needed is distinct recognition. You want to keep your nation's integrity, you speak to the Welshman. Well, the Welshman's had a few problems with domestic terrorism as well over the years. But, we have this situation, Jess, where undeniably some appalling things have happened. I mean, during the radioactive weapons test, for example, they decided to test in the outback because it was home, and I quote some of the documents from the time from the MOD, where it's home to only one or two elderly blacks. They didn't realise that where they had put their weapons testing range was literally slap bang in the middle of the equivalent of an Aboriginal, an Indigenous motorway, because people moved hundreds, thousands of miles regularly over years along rock hole roads, finding water and food as they went, to the white man who turns up, they go, well, this is a barren nothing. There's nothing here. We can just blow it up. But to the people who lived there, you are now stopping us eating and drinking. Yeah. They were forcibly relocated. They were very badly mistreated in lots and lots of ways. And their traditional lifestyles were severely disrupted. They still can't go back to those areas for their traditional ceremonies and things, not for very long anyway. So, where do your sympathies lay with this, Jess? I mean, many parts of the Commonwealth have a reasonable argument do they have that argument for long ago mistreatment, or is it something, is it a bit performative for the cameras because the king's there?
See, I think it's a very, very difficult situation.
Both, isn't it? Of course,
it is. It can be both. Yeah, it's. I mean, she's obviously chosen her moment. She's done it, and she's picked a great moment in order to get attention for her cause. Some of the language used was very strong against a king who is going through health issues. However, her points. She does have a point, but also, as critical thinker said in that message there, history, unfortunately, we have, if you want to look at it this way, been on the wrong side of history on so many occasions because, obviously Britain was or England at the time was like a conquering power. We had the British Empire, which we then built up, what happened across the world. I mean, you look at India, look at all these places where we used to have a colonial foothold, the impact that we've had for such a small little island on the world. We cannot sit here and go, oh dear, woe is us. That is outrageous that she said that, because actually at the end of the day, there is an argument there entirely. I mean, we should, I don't think anyone would defend what we've now heard of what happened. However, is it King Charles's fault? But if you don't say it to him, who do you say it to?
Exactly. And if you don't have reparations, because none of us are responsible for what happened, then what do you have? And do you end up, it comes down to sort of favourable trade agreements or something, which is, kind of like a modern day version of being, sending your resources to the motherland, isn't it? It's a horrible mess, and you can get involved in tokenism and all sorts of other things. But I suspect this is something that's probably going to follow the king for the rest of the week. So the rest of their engagements, they include, for example, yesterday they met a Sunday school group of children. There was a small group of protesters nearby as well who sort of weren't too much bother. And Charles thanked them. Thanked Australia for making him feel so welcome. Today they're going to be at the Australian War Memorial and a War Memorial for Indigenous Australians, where this story will come back again, I expect. Yeah. Then Camilla's going to hold a discussion about domestic violence. Charles is going to visit the Science Agency. Then he's going to be the first sovereign to take part in a traditional Indigenous Aboriginal smoking ceremony. And this story is going to come back again. I'm going to pipe, whatever. He's going to meet Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representatives as well. Wes says, it says a lot about this country: countless scandals, endless corruption, relentless denial. It doesn't help inspire me much. The King's got a packed diary, Jess. There's a lot of scandals. I mean, we've already talked this morning about the Price of Moses and Pride of Britain. Here we are with another one, which is what was done to Australia, which Lydia has shone a light on. And probably there's people who are watching this show who wouldn't have thought about it if it wasn't for her. And there's definitely sort of some serious wrongs there. But how on earth? You can't take the radiation out of the outback. You can't bring back the dead. You can't do any of the things to unpick any of this. The past is the past. But this is a story that's going to keep coming back, isn't it, for the rest of the week? And everyone that the king meets is going to be asked, as soon as he's gone, they're going to say, did you talk to him about, what did you think about?
What did you say about that? And it's going to haunt.
And he's going to be, when he's talking to Indigenous people, everything he says and the Queen says is going to be looked at for a possible, how does he feel about it?
Analyse what does he really think. It's a very difficult situation. Robert James here says her protestations were understandable, but what she said to King Charles was outrageous, which I think is sort of what we're both sort of saying. Do you say, was it too much of what she said?
Yeah, but if she said it,
you don't say it. Who do you say?
If she said it more politely, would it have been on the BBC News this morning? No,
probably not. No.
And if she said, "Well, crikey, Your Majesty, it would be nice if we had some reparations," and he said, and moved on. We wouldn't even. We probably wouldn't be.
We wouldn't be talking about it.
Or she's done something that dramatic.
And it is a period of history that a lot of people will know about everything that went on, but a lot of people sort of know roughly what happened. But some of the stuff is, that you hear some of the sort of most outrageous sort of things that happened when we go to places. I mean, we can't sit back and say, it was so long ago, we don't have any responsibility. at the same time, where do you draw the line with what happened in the past and today? Because otherwise we could end up paying reparations for, you know, going back.
Handing out money, fix it.
Exactly.
Yes, because you took a lot of resources and people and wealth from us. And other times you go, well, it's not really the thing that you're missing. It's something else. You know,
it's cultures.
Exactly. Things which
cultures and, you know, children who have been misplaced, etc., you know, through various systems.
I think it's certainly something, though, that you can show contrition over, and there's lots of families that have been affected by slavery. Some of the wealthiest families have done that. They've given a check for some things, but, you know, sort of returning artifacts, saying sorry, saying it shouldn't have happened. Those are all things which can help move on and achieve some kind of justice, so people don't have to keep doing stunts like Lydia's to get noticed and have something talked about. Richard said, Indigenous and our own people were a resource to be exploited. Human rights viewed retrospectively are seen with a very dim view. UK was in service to the gentry and to the king. And it was fair, but it was odd as well. We have this situation. It's just what happened in the past. It's not what would happen today. But we can't keep denying these things happened, because denying the truth just means people like Lydia, people like those involved in infected blood and everything else, just start fighting and campaigning even harder. Something needs to be resolved. But now we do have one thing before we move on to good news. Keir Starmer is going out to join the King in the Southern Hemisphere. They're both going to be at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Samoa, where Charles is going next. And apparently more than a dozen Commonwealth countries are reportedly going to seek reparations from Britain for slavery. Now, Keir has said he won't pay it, but there are other ways of helping which can be discussed. I mean, I think we probably talked about this to some extent, Jess, but I mean, what do you think Starmer should do on this issue? He's obviously going to have a diplomatic
answer.
Now, what does he say? How does he handle it?
The thing is, the big question is, and I'm sure a lot of people will be asking this, can we afford to pay all of those kind of things? No, it would probably bankrupt us. Do you know what I mean? Keir is in a very difficult position on that. And obviously, again, it's very, you know, it's similar to what we've just been saying. It was, you know, it's an atrocious time in history. We banned it long before, led the abolition long before over in America. When
we established it. And then
we established it, but we did also then, you know, William Wilberforce, etc. Obviously, I used to live in Hull, so there's a little one on that, but, you know, where he came from. But, you know, we did do it sort of a long time before they did over there. And ended it here. But I mean, it is an atrocious point in our history, and I'm sure there'd be many counterpoints to, but this happened, people were treated like this, other places, you know, even today you've got modern slavery. But I mean, I think we can all agree, I mean, when you read the stories and the stories of the slave ships and the way people were treated, it's just an atrocious, appalling idea that came up at the time for pure people not judging people as people. No, and you know, none of us could fathom that now. No. But I don't know, what do we do? What is the answer? What would make it better for people? How can you ever repay that? What price do you put on that for a family?
Hopefully, there's some of the Indigenous rights and everything else, human rights that we have spread around the world now, is something which does repay it in some small measure. And the fact that now, I mean, crikey, even 50 years ago, someone who had done that to the King in Australia or anywhere else in the Commonwealth would probably be in clink by the end of the day, and certainly would probably get, you know, rotten fruit thrown at them in the street and everything else. So the fact that you can have this protest and have the debate is an improvement, although it's probably not as good as it could be. So we'll have to see.
I mean, if you go into sort of situation where you think it wasn't long ago, when you think the sort of knock-on effect of all of this and the sort of that aspect of racism is so bad in Britain. We recently did Rudolph Walker's book, who plays Patrick Truman in EastEnders. And he talks about how he came over in I think it was probably the end of the 60s that he said he came over. And he talked about how he was on the ship coming over and he was separated from everybody else. There was a whole deck where they were not allowed to go on, all defined by race. And then when he got here, he had that sort of like the awful situation of like places where they had the signs like, no, what, I'm not going to repeat it because it's so disgusting, but you know what I mean. Yeah. They had those kind of signs saying couldn't live here. He had a white girlfriend who turned around and said to him, if there's riots, I'm taking the side of the whites. I mean, it's just shocking when you think that wasn't long ago at all. You know, no. Screens today. Yeah. And as we know, people are still fighting this sort of racism in many forms and prejudice in many forms. It's just, we've come a long way, but we haven't come near far enough. It's, you know, and a lot of this has, you know, spilt over from that awful tragedy of what happened hundreds of years ago with slavery and history.
We'll have to see how the King and Queen and Keir handle this as they go through the rest of the week. But I mean, one of the reasons we want to discuss this, although it's not really in the paper today, is the fact that this is the thing that's going to set the news agenda for the next few days here and in Australia, I suspect. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out and how the King handles it. Now, we have got some good news for you, though. We have managed to find in the world. Here it is. Now, Emmy, Teddy, and Santi have been they're pictured there, featured on this show before when they were 3 lion cubs. They were trapped in a Polish zoo, having been taken out of Ukraine, only a few months old after the war broke out. They'd been separated from their mother very early on, and they were stuck in a fairly horrible Polish zoo and needed to have a permanent home. They're now living it up at Yorkshire Wildlife Park, where they celebrated their birthday yesterday, ripping open some boxes containing treats, hopefully things like, you know, Vladimir Putin's lower limbs in there, stuff like that, something they can enjoy chewing on. Jess, is this proof that, you know, regardless of how you moved from one bit of rock to another bit of rock, and so long as you did it after being invited rather than inviting yourself, home is really where the heart is?
I think it is. I mean, look at them. They're thriving there. I mean, this has been a cause that's been really, you know, mirrors back to all the way, and we've helped bring them over. I mean, they're gorgeous, these lions, and what a lovely story. I mean, they look so happy with their little painted boxes of probably like liver and horrible gross things, as you say, inside.
They've definitely missed a trick, not having like a Guy Fawkes of Putin or something and shoving it full of sausages.
They did.
That's what I would have done.
We should have done these presents for them.
It's the Yorkshire Wildlife Park PR.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely missed a trick there.
Yes.
There's a number of people they could have done a Guy Fawkes thing.
A few severed limbs and Donald Trump's wig. Chuck it in a box. There you go.
Exactly, in the box. Let the lions munch on it. But yeah, no, it's lovely, isn't it? I mean, it's what a heartwarming story to see it around. I mean, you're helping 3 lions. It's a drop in the ocean of what you can do for all of the animals around the world that need help and everything, but it's something, and it's nice to see that they're there and they're thriving.
Yes, yeah, lions shouldn't really be in Yorkshire, but it's better than Polish Zoo. So that's the best place for them, really, considering. Right, thank you very much, Jess, for taking us through all that. Thank you, everyone, for taking part. Get in touch if there's anything that you feel that we've missed or got wrong. Email me, susie.boniface@mirror.co.uk, where I will happily ignore your missives. If you're listening on podcast, please leave us a review. So other people can find us. We will be back on Wednesday, probably with a bit more about Pride of Britain, I would expect, in the paper by then. And whatever has happened down under since then as well. Join us on Wednesday. Until then, everybody, stay safe, take care. Tatty bye.